Welcome to Max 101. Unless you're living under a rock, you probably know that we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. So, as a result, Trimet announced that 20 bus lines will be affected, and they will be reducing frequency on these lines starting January 9th. Depending on when this video goes up, that may have already started, but I'm filming this all the way back in December, so yeah. Trimet is over 100 operators short. They need over 100. So, yeah, we're not in the best of situations right now, and every transit agency, and more broadly, every company is having issues hiring people right now. So maybe this video is kind of coming at a bad time, as in, you know, we're having to reduce our services again, but this video is kind of something to look forward to. This video is more or less some stuff out of my head, just getting it out there. It's basically the direction that I would go in if I were general manager of Trimet. So firstly, let's take a look at our services. We have 5 MAX lines, light rail lines, although that could be debated because the yellow and orange is basically the same thing. We have a slightly flawed but still useful commuter rail system. We have some streetcar lines, as well as 80 plus bus lines. That seems pretty good. Alright, but let's see what our neighbors to the north are doing. Not Canada, but Seattle. Just King County Metro alone, one of 3 major transit agencies running through Seattle, has a fleet size of 1,500 buses and, drumroll please, 237 bus routes. What? Now, in all fairness, some of these bus routes only run like 1 or 2 trips a day, and they go toward downtown in the morning and away from downtown in the evening. Seattle is pretty bad about that. They have a lot of routes that do that. So, yeah, whatever, but 237 bus routes? That's just insanity. I think Trimet should be looking into doing that sort of thing. Like, Trimet is a good transit system. The services we have make sense, and we have a large area. And this is kind of a fair comparison because Portland and Seattle's population aren't really that much different. And Trimet's service area versus King County Metro's service area are kind of similar. So I think this is a fair-ish comparison. I think Trimet should set a goal to do that, to expand to the point at where we have hundreds of lines. So now let's talk about things. So the MAX, I think, is pretty much the way it should be, although I think we should look into increasing blue line frequency to every 10 minutes. You can leave all the others at 15 minutes, but the blue line I really think needs to be every 10 minutes because it's the busiest line in the system, and 15 minutes, if you just miss a train, 15 minutes is a while. Now, as I said in my articulated bus video, I think Trimet should also get articulated buses on all the frequent service routes as well as any others that make sense. Now, of course, we have the FX line on Division that will open in September this year. That's amazing. I think there needs to be more. If we got FX service on TV Highway, that would solve a lot of problems. And possibly, say, Powell Boulevard or 82nd Avenue. If those had FX service as well, I think that is the direction we should be heading for buses. For the really crowded routes, make the bus service better. Put a focus on that. Now, for those frequent service lines that would get the 60-foot buses, I think that would work for all lines except for maybe the 8, because the 8 has to climb those hills up and through OHSU, and that might be kind of weird to take 60-foot buses up there. If it would work, then it would probably be fine. And the only other routes, and I really don't like how these are done, are the 54 and 56. The 54 and 56 combined give you the 15-minute frequent service, but on their own they run every 30 minutes. So that wouldn't really make too much sense to have articulated buses on those either. I mean, you still could, but I don't really like how they do that. Even if they ran the buses every 20 minutes and so combined had a frequency of every 10 minutes, even that I think still isn't enough because of the 20 minutes waiting time. Maybe it would work, maybe that's a direction that we should be going to for the 54 and 56, but for now, I don't understand. I had to, because I wanted to go 3 stops on the line 54 for the first stop on Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway, I had to wait 20-something minutes because I got to BTC at, you know, a bad time and had to wait through all that. So I ended up walking a whole bunch and killed some time and still had to wait like 10 minutes. I shouldn't have to do that, especially since this route is designated as a frequent service route. So now let's talk about Trimet's past lines that I think it would be nice to bring back. Firstly, before anything, I think bringing back the letter X on the ends of the express routes just makes sense to me. If the 61 were called the 61X, Markham Hill Beaverton, or 64X, Markham Hill Tigard, or whatever, I think that would make a lot more sense than just 61 Express to Markham Hill or to Beaverton Transit Center or whatever. It's just having that letter X makes it obvious what kind of service it is. There were also a few bus lines back in the day that would run express trips on their routes. Something similar to what the 30 used to do, and now that this temporary service reduction is going into effect, they're not doing it anymore. But the 30E, there would be one morning and one evening trip for the 30E. The morning trip went to Portland, the evening trip went to Estacada. And it would run express from there, and it was very interesting. The 14 bus used to do the same thing, but they discontinued that a couple of years ago. It would start in downtown Portland, and then as soon as it crossed the Hawthorne Bridge, there would be no stops until I believe Cesar Chavez Boulevard, aka 39th Avenue. All of that was skipped. Have you ever heard of this bus? 91X. I'm going to provide a link down below to the Wayback Machine page on this whole thing. It's from like 1998 or something like that. The 91X TV Highway Express, it started in Portland, in the Lloyd District. Served Rose Quarter Transit Center, went through downtown Portland, ended up on the Sunset Highway or something, and went express on TV Highway. It ended at the Hillsborough Central Transit Center. That would be very useful nowadays, especially with how crowded TV Highway is and how many of those people on TV Highway are trying to get to Portland. Nowadays, if you want to get to Portland from TV Highway, you have to take the 57 to Beaverton Transit Center and either take the MAX or take the 58 bus. Fun fact, the 57 bus used to go into Portland too. They split it for 57 and 58 sometime in the 90s. Well, that nicely leads into the next thing I'm going to talk about, and that is to split certain lines up. I don't know if this is 100% necessary, but I do think it would probably ease confusion. Well, firstly, let's start with the line 15. The line 15 route is really long and goes to a million different destination points. On the east side, all 15 trips begin at the Gateway Transit Center, and they travel all the way on the 15 route, as you would expect. But once they hit downtown Portland, some buses just end in downtown. And so they'll say line 15, downtown only, on the reader boards. Or some of them head to Northwest Thurman, 23rd and Thurman. Or some of them head to Montgomery Park at Northwest Vaughn and 27th or something like that. Or some of them go off to Yeon and 44th. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. What? Why does there need to be so many different destination points? Already, one of these branches that used to go to Thurman and Gordon was split, the line 26. So, they already have split it once. I would imagine they probably will end up splitting it again for trips all the way to Yeon and 44th. Service to Yeon and 44th is only every 30 minutes. Every other trip doesn't. the 15 runs with 15-minute frequency, but every other trip goes all the way to Yeon and 44th. So really that's only getting every 30-minute frequency anyways. So if it were a separate bus, that might make more sense. Maybe it wouldn't. I'm not really sure. So now let's talk about C-shaped routes. There are two that I know of, even though there might be more. The 17 and the 19. I think it's just too confusing. The line 17 is called Holgate Broadway. Well, wait a second. Holgate is somewhere down here. Broadway is all the way up here. They're not even close. I don't really know why it's one bus that does all that. So from up here, it travels kind of on an old streetcar route, by the way, down Broadway, over the Broadway Bridge and into downtown. And then goes over Tillicum and ends up all the way on Holgate and comes all the way back out this way. So when you're looking for the schedule and you see, oh, I'm going to go to 134th Avenue or something, you know, fine. But on the way back, you're seeing that the buses are ending in northeast Portland, even though you know you were traveling this way. So you end up going all the way over here, up through here, and it's... what? So if there was, say, a separate bus that went to that Saratoga and 27th or whatever, and went to downtown, and then, I don't know, that was it. And then you had another one that did Holgate Boulevard and ended in downtown, then I think that would be fine. If, you know, one could turn into the other, kind of like how when a 54 enters downtown Portland, it becomes a 56 leaving Portland, and when a 56 enters Portland, it becomes a 54 leaving Portland. But not really the same. It would be buses that come in from this way would turn into a bus up to Saratoga and 27th, and would do that. And then buses coming this way would turn into a Holgate bus and head back the other way. I'm probably making that very confusing, but they would just switch numbers or maybe destinations. Yeah, I don't really know how that would work. And the same thing with the 19. The 19 begins at Gateway, goes all the way down Gleason, goes through downtown, and then somehow ends up on Woodstock. Which, again, two parallel streets. That's a very strange and not really easy to understand bus route, especially if you don't look at the map of the 19. And in fact, the 19 is kind of a friggin' disaster anyways with the Union Manor thing, and you could go via 28th or via 32nd, and then there's the Rex Loop. It's like, how many different bus lines can you create in one? I think having some simple shuttle bus, which, remember the Union Manor shuttle? I think bringing something like that back, like a circulator, and also a Rex Loop circulator, I think that would probably make more sense than whatever the mess is that is the 19 right now. And a big maybe for this one, but the 12 as well, because the 12 is a pretty long route. Travels from the Tiger Transit Center on Barber Boulevard, through downtown, and then ends up on Sandy Boulevard. So it's a pretty long route, and in fact, fun fact, it used to go even further. It used to go all the way to Sherwood, but then the 94 replaced that. Yeah, it is kind of long, and it could do with similar treatment, but I'm not sure that one's as necessary because you're still always going in one direction. It's not like you're going on two different parallel streets or something. So let's talk about the numbering system for Trimet's buses. They're kind of already doing it like this, but line numbers 1 through 99 are just standard buses. Actually, 1 through 89 are the standard buses. A lot of the 90s are express buses. You know, the 92, well, the 91, the TV Highway Express that was discontinued a long time ago. 92, 94, 96, 99, those are all express bus routes. But, and also I would think it would be a good idea to bring back the letter X so that it makes it more obvious that these are express routes. The 100s, line numbers 101 through 149, well, those don't really exist. So I guess that would start to go into like overflow kind of stuff where if you get so many lines it would overflow into the 100s. But the 150s are kind of your sunny side buses. There is a whole story behind this, and I don't really remember it, but it used to go numbers. There used to be a line 150 all the way to 158, but some other transit agency, I think it was Sandy Area Metro, I think they took over some of those routes, but still some of them exist. So 155 is Sunnyside Road, 156 Mather Road, if I'm even pronouncing that right. Those routes are Sunnyside routes, and those used to be provided by 150 or 151, which was the Sunnyside Shuttle or something like that. But now only a few of those exist. And there also used to be a line 158, Happy Valley, that was discontinued after the Green Line opened. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I was talking about line numbers, and then all of a sudden we got onto something completely different. But the 200s seem to be Trimet's night buses. The 291 is the Orange Line night bus, and the 272, before it was temporarily suspended, was the PDX night bus. Well, Trimet also had two other lines that would run 24 hours a day before COVID happened. And those were the 20 and the 57. Both of those ran 24 hours a day, every day. And so, at night, these would become the 220 and the 257. But it would be a little bit different. The 220, at least this is how I would do it, the 220 would begin at the Gresham Central Transit Center, would not serve Mount Hood Community College or any of that, and it would head back on Burnside, not on Stark, and it would serve where the MAX platforms are. So there would be a stop at Burnside and 197th, 188th, 181st, 172nd, 162nd, all of those would have a stop. Gateway would likely not have a stop. From 102nd Avenue on, it would be a normal Line 20 bus. But it would be called the 220 Burnside Night Bus. And then you could also have a 257, which would be the TV Highway Night Bus. I don't know if it would be necessary to run this bus all the way to Forest Grove. At least running it as far as the Hillsborough Central Transit Center, I think would be fine. And it would begin at Beaverton Transit Center, and it would pretty much, I think, I haven't really figured this one out too much yet. Okay, now for just everything else that's come out of my head. Firstly, the Hillsborough bus improvements, which I talked about in a previous video. I think that's important to focus on. Again, right now, it's kind of not the right time to be focusing on making, expanding service when right now we're reducing service because of COVID and because of a lack of operators and staffing issues. But hopefully, when it recovers, we can move forward in that direction and get more bus lines in downtown Hillsborough. I would also have a line 3. It would be called 3 Council Crest. This would start on the Transit Mall and head down toward the Providence Park area, and then goes to Council Crest with weekend service. That way, for visitors that want to check out Council Crest, they can. It would follow the old streetcar route as closely as possible. Similar to what the 51 does, but with better service. There could also be a bus on Multnomah Boulevard, Allen Boulevard, and 170th, and yeah, just kind of the southern Beaverton boulevards. That would make sense to have a bus on 170th. I may do a separate video just talking about these bus lines, so I might make a part 2 and upload this because this video ended up way longer than it needed to. I'm actually just going to read the rest of this from my phone. So have the 43 and or 44 serve the Barber Transit Center because it goes right by it and doesn't actually serve the transit center. Better bus lines or bus service on Johnson Creek Boulevard, and possibly split the 34 from that section. That needs further investigation. I'll look more into that. The 14 could just simply be renamed to Hawthorne and Foster instead of just Hawthorne. Different east-west routing for the 15 and 51. Having the one-way couplets so far away from each other doesn't make sense to me. It goes on Washington Street in one direction and Salmon Street in the other direction. Those are way too far. It should be on Washington and Alder Streets, right next to each other. A new express line, or possibly like how the 30 does it, just a couple of express trips plastered in throughout the day. The 79X for express trips. Another new line, line 7, for MLK and McLoughlin Boulevard. This is kind of the continuation of MLK Boulevards, but from the west side you'd have a bus that would probably start on the Transit Mall, cross the Hawthorne Bridge, come down MLK and Grand Avenues, which becomes McLoughlin Boulevard, and then you could have it end in downtown Milwaukee. Or as I actually put on here, the Tacoma Park and Ride. Doesn't have to go all the way to downtown Milwaukee. And I also have other ideas for increasing the 54 to 15-minute frequency and having the 56 run express on that segment to Portland. I'm going to have to do a separate video talking about this because it's very confusing just saying it in words. Now let's black the screen, and this is the full list of bus routes. It's really long. This is just the bus routes. Remember, we have MAX lines, the West, and some streetcar lines as well. The new bus lines that you see here are highlighted in blue, and the FX lines that I think would make sense to turn into FX service are in green. Well, this video took ages to get through, so I will make a second part probably talking about this in more detail about some of these improvements and what makes sense to me. So I'll see you next time for another new video.